I got a laugh last night. I was reading the Philadelphia Inquirer, and there was an op-ed writer who basically, and I'm not going to claim that he borrowed from this program, although it's funny. I've been telling you, if you want to see rich progressives go nuts, if you really want to preserve the middle class, quote unquote, as they're called, and you want to see what will happen when you actually attack the lifestyles of well-to-do liberals in the process of raising taxes, that is. It seems that well-to-do liberals, well-to-do progressives want to see tax increases, but stop short at anything that would affect their lifestyles. Now, it's funny. We're having all of these talks about the 16th Amendment. Oh, Andrew, the 16th Amendment says you can tax whatever you want. 16th Amendment says you can tax anything you want. That's not true. The Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes on incomes from whatever source derived without apportionment among the several states and without regard to any census of enumeration. There's a huge difference between taxing wealth and income. A huge difference. When you attack wealth, you attack capital that has already been amassed. When you attack income, you attack capital that's yet to be earned. And you also have to look at it like this. Again, we keep hearing about the Bush tax cuts of 2001. Well, let's say you were a young, idealistic voter in 2001. And you voted for Al Gore. I mean, you were so ready to vote for Al. You just were so ready for the Gore administration. And you huffed and you puffed at Bush v. Gore. And you hated George W. Bush. And in 2004, you thought you'd vote for John Kerry. But now you're 10 years older. Times have changed for you. Your life has changed. Your lifestyle has changed. Your tastes have changed. Perhaps you've actually applied yourself in some way. You have gotten married. You might even have a new baby. And all of a sudden, you say to yourself, you know, I worked for this. I want to keep this. And the truth is, when you look at teenagers, when you look at college students, when you look at people who are in the apex of being young, you can tell them anything about the future and it doesn't matter. And this was, look, I'm not denying that I certainly didn't hear the words of wisdom from my elders when I was 18, 19, 20 years old. That's part of being young. Wisdom is something you gain with age. You can be smart and lacking in wisdom. You can be smart and lacking in experience. You can be smart and lacking in perspective. But a decade will give you perspective, wisdom, and experience. If you just got to the point now, this year, where you're making the kind of money that puts you in a category of degradation by the American left, and it's taken from you, you've spent the past 10 years of your life building to something, whether starting a business or working for a business. For what? To get to the top of the hill and be pushed back down? By people who have lots of wealth that they acquired years before you got into the game. If we're going to attack wealth, then it's time to get into the bank accounts of people like Nancy Pelosi and the generation-skipping foundations and trusts created by the Kennedys and their clan. Not going after people who are hitting middle management, seeing a profit on their small businesses, seeing some of their investments pan out. But the people who are and I don't even want to attack that, but that's something no progressive would put up with. Again, How is it that somebody who makes 250 can be counted in with millionaires? How is that possible? There's a $750,000 gap between 250 and $1 million. Now, I pointed out that maybe, just maybe, you should start the highest rates at 1 million and go 1% surcharge per million. If you were to find a tax that cut into the lifestyle and the ability, the clout of very rich liberals, they would lose their damn minds. Now, I thought this was funny. The writer's name is Stu Bykowski, writes for the Philadelphia Inquirer. And it says, last week I read your deficit reduction speech. I was disappointed with both style, not one soaring message or passage, and substance. There were no specifics except one I'll get to in a minute. Goes on to say that he talks about how he lined up to vote for Obama, believed in hope and change and all that good stuff. But now he's waiting for a real message on taxes, debt, and deficit. Says here, Mr. President, last year you tried to kill the upper income tax bracket, a tax break, and Republicans held unemployment payments and middle-class tax cuts hostage. You failed. Now you want to go back and try again, but the same approach will produce the same result. Here's where you went wrong last time. You said no family earning less than $250,000 a year would pay a dime more in taxes. Basically, you painted families earning more than $250,000 as rich. Depending on personal circumstances, they may be comfortable. They may be well off. But if it's a two-income family in a nice house in a nice neighborhood with 2 kids in college and a labradoodle, they're not rich. Although only 1.5% of American households earn $250,000 or more, according to the Census Bureau, the perception is they are not quote-unquote rich. And in politics, perception is reality. What is rich in the public mind? Quote-unquote rich is having to borrow from CeeLo Green FU money. If anyone does anything you don't like, you say F you. Republicans got away with claiming that ending that tax break was an attack on the middle class. It wasn't, but it was their story and it had traction. In the national argument in the months ahead, each side will try to create a narrative to capture the flag of American public opinion. That's why, Mr. President, this time around, start the tax bite at 1 million. Proclaim it a tax increase on millionaires only. Finally, scaling it back will bring in less than the full rollback's $1.3 trillion over 10 years, estimated for me by Lauren Adler of the Bipartisan Policy Center. Politically, it will force Republicans to defend tax breaks for millionaires at the expense of the rest of us. I can just imagine the TV commercials. When Americans ask themselves who's better able to give a little more, the working class or millionaires, you would win. Isn't that funny? Here you have a liberal op-ed writer saying that you can't say 250 is a tax on millionaires. You should start at 1 million if you mean millionaires. For how long have I been saying this? Now, here's the thing. If you were to actually cut into the lifestyle of liberal Democrats in that socioeconomic status, they would lose their damned minds. If you took away the private jets and the second homes and all the other things that come along with being wealthy, these people, because again, socialism is for the people, not the socialist. This is for you people. This is for you. Have you ever noticed that the first thing that happens when progressives get their way is that the first thing that they seek to do after getting their way is escaping what it is that they've made? Why do you have a cluster of progressives coming out of Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Brown, Columbia? The Ivy League's private. If they believe in the supremacy of public education, why don't all of these progressives, both students and academics, gravitate to the public system? Why is it here in the city of New York that all of the well-to-do progressives send their children to places like Horace Mann, one of the most elite private schools in the country? Why is it that, according to the Chicago Tribune, 40% of Chicago public school system teachers and administrators send their own children to private school. Why is that? Why is it that the system created by progressives gives them an escape route? I was talking about this yesterday, and I'm going to continue this. If you're seeking to eliminate the aristocracy, if you in your heart of heart have a principal objection to the existence of an aristocracy, then you are at true heart a socialist. And on that sense, I could sit down and discuss with you because you believe what you say. If you're a bourgeois socialist, as outlined by Karl Marx in the Communist Manifesto, you're a phony and a fraud. But that's exactly what we have here in the United States. The majority of Marxists are really bourgeois socialists. They want all of the trappings of wealth, all of the security that comes with it, access to all of the finest things in life for themselves, but themselves only. 1-866-95-PATRIOT. But I enjoy the fact that that we have this writer for the Philadelphia Inquirer saying if you mean millionaires, then you have to start at $1 million. Not that I agree with starting at $1 million. If somebody earned $1 million, if they didn't break the law to do so, then they should be allowed to keep the lion's share of what it is that they earned. Income is not a social commodity. Labor is not a social commodity. We own our being. We own our ability. We own our property. And if we labor diligently to acquire wealth and property, if we follow the laws, if we market ourselves and our skills, if we create what it is that accumulates wealth, then we should be allowed to keep it. And as far as the debt that we have to society for so-called common defense and general welfare, there are 18 things that the government's allowed to do at the federal level, and that's the only things they're allowed to do at the federal level, and taxes for it in the process. If there's some senator or some congressman that believes in the National Endowment of the Arts, then they should take some money from one of their PACs or one of their campaigns or help the National Endowment of the Arts privately raise money and leave the rest of us the hell alone. How dare the government buy art in my name that I would never buy myself? And here's another thing. It goes like this. I've made the joke about dogs playing pool. Now, I don't have a man cave in my house, but if I did, that would be the first picture I would put up. The second would be dogs playing poker, along with some of my horror movie lithographs that I've acquired over the years, like a copy of an original Todd Browning Dracula. That's besides the point. If I think that a lithograph of Todd Browning's Dracula or a theatrical movie poster from the movie Underworld or Earth versus the Flying Saucer, all of these I have, by the way. I used to have them in my apartment when I was single, when my apartment was a man cave. In front of the TV, I had Plan 9 from Outer Space and Earth versus the Flying Saucer. Over the fireplace, I had a finely framed lithograph of the original theatrical release poster for Dracula. Over my computer, I had the theatrical release poster for the movie Underworld, starring Kate Beckinsale. This is when I was single. But if I think that's art, and the people making other types of art can't sell it to me or anyone else, if the government buys art in my name because that's what good art is, then the government is dictating what good art is. That's not what government exists to do. And you can't find that power or even that in the philosophy of the founding of this country. The only thing that is provided to artists is security of their intellectual property. That is actually one of the enumerated powers. Nothing more, nothing less. The basis of copyright laws. Let's see, what do we have for today? A lot of good stuff. Breitbart's going to be joining us. S.E. Cupp's going to be joining us. The AP has a follow-up article on the 45% who pay no federal income taxes. And Obama's new phrase is, a word I should say, is not hope, it's not change, it's compassion. Well, somebody ought to teach him what the meaning of the word compassion is, because government isn't compassion. I love these people that think they're going to get one over on me and call and say, well, Jesus would want universal health care. Maybe so, but not at the tip of a Roman spear. 1-866-95-PATRIOT, 957-2874. The arguments cannot be broken. Sirius XM Patriot.